Chosen one, you've been watched, you've been judged, and for far too long, they built a story around you, a story meant to humiliate, to break you. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have possibly predicted, is that the truth doesn't stay buried forever. And now, that truth is coming for them. They thought they had you figured out, didn't they? For years, they framed you, twisted the narrative, and painted you as the villain. They made you the chaos, while they dressed themselves up as saints. It was a lie so convincing that even the world believed it. But here's the thing, truth is not patient. It waits for the perfect moment to reveal itself, and that moment is now. What you're about to hear isn't just about vindication, it's a revelation. The same people who once turned their backs on you, laughed at your downfall, and cheered for your destruction. They're now choking on the very lies they told. And you never had to fight back. Time did it for you. Now they're scrambling, distancing themselves from the very people who framed you, and all that's left is their disgust, not because of the truth, but because the truth exposed them. You, chosen one, have been part of something far bigger than you realized. Your story was always meant to be more than just a narrative. They tried to break you, but you've turned their plan into something miraculous. And the best part? You didn't even have to prove anything. The truth spoke for itself, and now the world sees who you really are. So, I need you to do something. If this message is resonating with your spirit, and you feel that fire stirring inside you, drop a comment below with 777. Let the world know that you've been through this, and you're still standing stronger than ever. If you believe in divine justice, hit that like button, subscribe, and keep spreading this energy, because what's coming for you next is far beyond anything they ever expected. Are you ready to see how this truth has been unfolding for you all along? Because this isn't just a story of revenge, it's a story of divine revelation. Let's dive into it. God's chosen ones, you won't believe the truth. They framed you, and now they're disgusted. You, God's chosen ones, have experienced something that many cannot fathom: the weight of betrayal. The truth is, you were not just the victim of false accusations. You were used as a stepping stone in someone else's ego-driven plot. Their reputation was built on your ruin, and they crafted their story with precision so well that even the sharpest eyes were fooled. The lies they told about you were not completely fabricated. No, instead, they were built using fragments of your real self, pieces of your quiet strength, your consistency, your goodness, which they twisted and distorted to create a narrative that painted them as noble and you as unstable. But here's the truth: a lie built on real fragments always crumbles in the end. The truth will set you free. John 8:32. These words echo through the generations, reminding us that truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how well it is hidden. They constructed a false narrative, not just to expose you, but to elevate themselves by standing on your name. They knew that people crave stories, not facts. They love drama, entertainment, and the illusion of truth. And so they gave them a story, feeding the crowd a narrative wrapped in whispers and concerns that made them seem perfect, while you were made to look like a villain. But have you ever wondered why they chose you to frame God's chosen ones? Why were you the one they needed to drag through the mud? The answer lies in the fact that your light was too bright for them to ignore. They couldn't compete with your authenticity, so they resorted to lies to take you down. The more they smeared your name, the cleaner theirs appeared. But God's chosen ones, this was never about justice. It was about their desperate need for attention, their need to have people admire them while they stood on your back. Your silence became their microphone, amplifying their voices while they smeared your name. But silence, God's chosen ones, is not weakness, it is patience, it is strength. Have you ever stopped to reflect on the power of your silence? What does it mean for you, God's chosen ones, to remain silent in the face of all this chaos and manipulation. You see, patience is more than just a waiting game. It is a weapon, a shield. The Bible tells us that patience bears fruit. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. 2 Peter 3-9. Your patience, though misunderstood, has served you well. While they performed, lied, and manipulated, you stood firm in your truth, and your integrity aged like fine wine, growing stronger as time passed. Now, the truth has unraveled, and the empire of lies they built is collapsing, crumbling under the weight of its own deceit. What does it mean for you, as someone who has been tested by these lies, to finally see the truth emerge? As you witness the collapse of the false empire they created, how does it feel to know that you remained unbroken through it all? Imagine the moment when the same people who clapped for your destruction are now unable to meet your eyes. Their applause has turned to nausea, not because of the lies themselves, but because they are faced with the uncomfortable truth. They were part of the audience that enjoyed your pain. They cheered for cruelty, never realizing that the light they craved, the very light they secretly wished to have, was actually yours all along. You were never just a victim. You were the one they used to inflate their egos, to steal credibility and borrow your light, while pretending to warn others about you. You will know them by their fruits, Matthew 7:16. The fruits of their actions were bitter, steeped in deceit, while the fruits of your patience, humility, and strength are now ripe for the world to witness. They built their glory on your grief, but God's chosen ones, that light they borrowed from your integrity, has now burned down their stage. They are left in the dark, unable to hide from the truth that you have remained unbroken through it all. Your light, which they tried to dim, has only grown stronger, and now it is shining brighter than ever. You were always rich in what truly matters spiritually, emotionally, and energetically. And now, the external world is finally catching up to your internal balance sheet. The world's current crisis of meaning is your moment. This is not revenge, it's a revelation. You, God's chosen ones, are about to see the rewards of your quiet strength, rewards that were always meant for you but had to wait for the right time. You were the wealthy one all along. Now the world will see that your presence, your peace, your integrity, that is the true wealth. And it's your time to step into the abundance that you've always carried. Stand tall. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. You've already proven it in ways that matter. Just exist and watch the universe translate your value into visible form. The rewards you've earned will come, not because of your noise, but because of your authenticity, your truth, and your unshakable spirit. God's chosen ones, you were never the villain in this story. The frame they built around you wasn't just an accusation, it was a confession in disguise. They didn't accuse you because they had solid evidence. They accused you because they were drowning in guilt. The narrative they crafted about you was not a story about your behavior. It was a reflection of their own dark actions turned upside down. In their minds, by projecting their corruption onto you, they could somehow shield themselves from the glaring stains of their own souls. But here's the irony. The very story they told about you became the key to unlocking their own hypocrisy. It wasn't just about destroying your reputation, it was about them trying to launder their own conscience. They were able to stand tall in their own narrative, wearing the mask of the hero, all the while pretending that you were the villain. They accused you of everything they were guilty of, using your goodness as a scapegoat for their own darkness. In reality, what they called your pride was nothing more than their own arrogance projected onto you. What they accused you of manipulating was actually them pulling the strings all along. They labeled you selfish because you finally stopped catering to their insatiable egos. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Luke 6:38. The way they tried to label you with their accusations, God's chosen ones, was the very way they would ultimately be measured. Every insult they hurled at you was a confession wrapped in projection, revealing not your faults, but their own. The world may have looked at your silence, your patience, your consistency, and interpreted it as weakness. But energy doesn't lie, and the vibration of deceit is always bound to collapse under the weight of its own contradiction. And that is exactly what is happening now. When someone frames you, it's not just slander, it's a revelation of their true nature. They expose the exact traits they are trying to hide, and in the process, they are telling the world who they truly are. And now, God's chosen ones, the exposure is hitting hard. People are starting to connect the dots. Those details they used against you, they were too specific to be random. They weren't describing you, they were describing themselves all along. Have you ever reflected on how truth has a way of finding its way to the surface, even when it's buried deep beneath layers of lies and deception? God's chosen ones, the lies that were meant to bury you, have become undeniable proof of their own guilt. The truth isn't just clearing your name, it's exposing their inner darkness. You never needed to defend yourself, because the lies they spun around you came with timestamps. Time, in its natural way, is the courtroom that never loses a case. Think about how the passage of time has brought you closer to this moment. Every month that passed only made their hypocrisy clearer, and now it's undeniable. The accusations they leveled at you were nothing more than their own public confession. They didn't realize it, but they had already exposed themselves by projecting their darkness onto you. What they intended as a weapon to destroy you has become the mirror that reflects their own corruption back at them. Can you feel how the weight of their lies is now pressing down on them, God's chosen ones? Their sudden disgust with you isn't just about their moral failings, it's personal. They are disgusted not only by the truth of what they did to you, but because they can no longer ignore their own betrayal. They used you as a smokescreen, hoping no one would see the darkness that lurked inside them. But now, as the truth comes to light, they are confronted by the very image they tried to destroy. And now, God's chosen ones, the truth stands clear. You are not the villain in this story. They are. They have framed you, used your name as a stepping stone to elevate themselves, but in doing so, they've built their own prison. The universe has a way of handling hypocrisy with surgical precision, and now that the truth has surfaced, those who once plotted against you are left to confront the consequences of their own actions. Have you ever felt that moment of revelation when everything falls into place, and you realize that the very narrative they tried to weave against you was the one that ultimately revealed their true nature? This is your moment, God's chosen ones. The universe is showing the world who they really are. You don't need to retaliate or prove anything anymore. The truth, like a light, is exposing their darkness, and all you need to do is stand tall, unwavering, knowing that your integrity and patience have already won the battle. The frame they built around you has now become the mirror of their own deception, and the world will see it. They tried to destroy you with lies, but in the end, their own hypocrisy is the thing that will bring them down. And you, God's chosen ones, will remain unbroken, stronger than ever, with your integrity intact and your light shining brighter than ever before. God's chosen ones, it's time to fully understand the depths of the manipulation that has been carried out against you. The lies they spread about you were never about you at all. They needed you to be the villain, because it was the only way they could sleep at night. They knew the truth about their actions would have been too overwhelming to face, so instead, they transferred their guilt onto you. The envy, the insecurity, the jealousy, and the shame they carried those heavy burdens they couldn't bear them. So they wrapped those feelings up in a narrative about you, casting you in the role of the one at fault, the one to blame. It was easier for them to live with themselves when they could convince themselves they were the victims of your supposed chaos, rather than admit they were the ones who created the conflict in the first place. For the truth will set you free. John 8:32. This ancient wisdom is not just a spiritual saying, it's a deep truth that applies to all human hearts. The truth you were carrying was too pure for them to handle. So they turned your purity, your goodness, into their scapegoat. You became the vessel in which they could empty their guilt. Your reputation was never the problem, it was their conscience. They needed to believe that you were the one who was difficult, the one who was problematic, the one who was out of control. They didn't destroy your name for revenge. No, it was about their relief they needed to blame someone for their discomfort. Your name became the pillow on which they rested their guilt. But God's chosen ones, the mind has a funny way of defending itself when it doesn't want to face the truth. When people know they've wronged someone pure and innocent, their survival instinct kicks in. They rewrite history. They manipulate their own memory, convincing themselves that you were the one who changed, that you were the one who became difficult. They repeat these lies over and over, and in time, those lies become the lullaby that lulls them into a false sense of peace. This is survival, not logic. They convince themselves that they were victims, all the while trying to bury the truth that they wronged you. Do you see, God's chosen ones, how their lies served them as a shield against their own conscience? Your silence, your refusal to retaliate, became the place where they hid their darkness. You were the scapegoat, and they were able to keep their false narrative alive for a time. But truth doesn't stay buried forever. The cracks in their story began to show, and it became impossible for them to keep up the act. The details they used to accuse you of began to contradict who you truly are. People started noticing that the so-called villain was the only one who never spoke badly of anyone, that the so-called troublemaker was the one who still walked with peace in their heart. Here's where the shift happens. The comfort they once found in their lies turned into restlessness. The very lies that once helped them sleep are now the ones keeping them awake at night. God's chosen ones, the truth, has now started to break through the facade they carefully constructed. The weight of their false narrative is crushing them because they are being forced to face what they've avoided for so long. They wronged someone who never deserved it. The disgust people feel towards them is not just about their lies, it's about the shame they feel within themselves for believing those lies. Have you ever felt the weight of someone else's lies pressed against you? Have you ever wondered how the truth has its own power to make things clear, even when it's been buried for so long? It's easy to see that when someone tries to frame you or twist the story, they're doing so because they cannot bear the truth. And now, the truth is coming to light, and those who used you to hide their own guilt will have to confront it. Your name was never the problem. It was their need to cover up their own sins by shifting blame to you. Your integrity was the light they couldn't stand. Your goodness was the mirror they tried to break. What does it say about them, God's chosen ones, when the lies they told about you have now become the tools of their own undoing? When their false accusations now come back to haunt them, what does it mean for you, the one they tried to bring down? The irony is brutal. The very story they used to comfort themselves has now become the reason they cannot sleep. Their own hypocrisy is rising to the surface, and they cannot escape the mirror they have created. The frame they built around you has now become a mirror, reflecting not your failings, but their own darkness. In the end, God's chosen ones, their false accusations were not about you. They were about their inability to confront their own darkness. Their lies became the very thing that trapped them. And you, the one they tried to destroy, remain unbroken, steadfast, and now you are the one who stands victorious as the truth is revealed. Have you ever felt the moment when the weight of a lie finally collapses under its own contradictions? When the truth begins to rise, and those who lied are forced to face what they have done. This is your moment, God's chosen ones. The light of truth is shining brightly now, and nothing can stop it. God's chosen ones, what you've endured was never a random series of events. It wasn't just a series of unfortunate events that life threw at you. No, this was a divine setup, designed not to harm you, but to expose the true nature of those around you. When everything seemed to crumble around you, God allowed this test to unfold, to show you the real character of those who claimed to be close to you. When the lights went out, the truth of their hearts was revealed in ways that couldn't be hidden. It's easy for people to act righteous when life is calm, but crisis is the ultimate revelation. Have you ever noticed how, when things fall apart, the real intentions of those around you come to light. In the calm, people wear the mask of morality, but when crisis comes, the mask falls, and the truth about their hearts is exposed. What they did to you wasn't random, it was their response to pressure that revealed their true character. When you were framed, God's divine plan was to expose every hidden agenda that was concealed beneath the surface. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Luke 8:17. This is a truth that we often forget until it happens to us. The truth, God's chosen ones, is that crisis reveals character. Some people rejoiced at your downfall, others stayed silent, and a few pretended to care while secretly celebrating your pain. But what they didn't realize was that they were not passing judgment on you, they were revealing their own souls. The test wasn't about you, God's chosen ones, it was about the condition of their souls. What you went through wasn't a punishment from God, it was a divine separation, a separation between the true and the fake. God allowed this to cut away the pretenders who were never truly there for you. The betrayal wasn't designed to destroy you, it was meant to show you who was there for truth and who was there for their own agenda. Every lie that was told about you became an X-ray of their spirits, and the truth was so clear that there was no escaping it. Think about this. God's chosen ones, when people eagerly believed the worst about you, they didn't just betray you, they exposed the emptiness in their own hearts. When people watched you struggle without defending you, they revealed that their own comfort mattered more to them than standing by what was right. And those who betrayed you outright, they simply couldn't stand the reflection of your integrity because it forced them to confront their own darkness. Your suffering, God's chosen ones, became the mirror that reflected their cowardice, jealousy, and spiritual laziness. Have you ever thought that your struggle wasn't just for you, but was a divine lesson for them? Every moment of pain, every trial you faced, revealed their weakness and exposed the depths of their self-interest. And that's why it feels uncomfortable now. It's not you they're disgusted with, it's themselves. Have you ever witnessed how uncomfortable people get when the truth of their betrayal comes to light? It's not because they've wronged you, it's because they can no longer hide the truth of their actions. What disgusts them is not just their betrayal of you, but the reality that they were forced to see themselves for what they truly are. They were watching your trial, but in the end, they were inside theirs. They weren't just accusing you, they were defining themselves in the process. The truth will always come out. And now, as the truth surfaces, they realize that the very thing they thought would destroy you has become divine documentation. Every reaction, every silence, every betrayal is being recorded, not just by the world, but by heaven itself. You, God's chosen ones, were the test, the experiment that revealed who they really were. Their reactions to your suffering became their testimony. God's chosen ones, this is the moment when everything changes. The exposure isn't just about you, it's about them finally being forced to see who they truly are. The lies they told were a reflection of their own hypocrisy. And as their empire of deception collapses, you are left standing, unshaken, unbroken, and stronger than ever. The irony here is stunning. What was meant to destroy you, what was supposed to break your spirit, has become the key to revealing their truth. Your integrity, your resilience, has shined brighter than the lies that were meant to hide you. You were never broken, they were only shattering their own illusions. And now, as the world watches the truth unfold, it's clear, they were never really after you. They were after the comfort of their own deception. And now that deception has fallen apart, leaving them with nothing but the ugliness of their own actions. God's chosen ones, stand tall. This is your moment. You didn't need to defend yourself. The truth has already done that for you. The exposure of their lies is not your punishment, it's their reckoning. Your integrity, your faith, your patience has become the light that exposes their darkness. The stage is yours now, and the world will see the true cost of hypocrisy. God's chosen ones. What you went through wasn't just a test of character, it was a divine test of frequencies. The framing of your name, the lies that were spun, was never simply about who believed the falsehoods. It was about who their spirit naturally aligned with when truth was hidden. Heaven doesn't always test people with blessings. Sometimes God tests us with rumors. And in that moment when your name was dragged through the mud, heaven revealed the spiritual alignment of everyone around you. This moment wasn't just a scandal, it was a divine separation disguised as gossip. God wanted to see who would rely on their discernment and stand by truth, even when the crowd was shouting lies. Have you ever felt that God's chosen ones? The crowd roars with accusation, yet something deep inside tells you that truth is not what's being shouted. In that moment, when your name was being distorted and dragged, it was the sorting ground for souls. Those who stood by your side, quietly trusting the truth, were the ones who carried the light. Those who turned their backs, joining the chorus of gossip, were the ones who fed on decay. You will know them by their fruits. Matthew 7:16. In this context, their response to the lies about you became the revelation of their hearts. The frequency test wasn't about the words that left their mouths, but about the vibration of their spirits. Every soul vibrates at a frequency. Truth has a frequency, and so does deception. When the false story about you spread, people's reactions revealed exactly which wavelength they were tuned to. Think about this: God's chosen ones. Those who instantly believed the worst about you weren't neutral. Their spirit resonated with gossip, jealousy, and low vibration, and they couldn't recognize the truth because their own energy had no compatibility with it. It's like trying to tune a radio to a frequency it simply can't reach. Truth and lies vibrate at different frequencies, and when your name was dragged through the mud, those whose spirits were tuned to lower frequencies couldn't hear the truth. Instead, they were attuned to the noise of drama, to the sound of falsehoods that filled the air around you. On the other hand, those who stood by you, quietly faithful even without evidence, were carrying a higher frequency. Their loyalty was not emotional, it was spiritual. They didn't need proof to know your truth, because they could discern the purity in your soul, the clarity in your character, and the light that radiated from your being. Their faith wasn't dependent on circumstances or public opinion. It was grounded in the spiritual realm. This test of frequencies was the divine sorting mechanism, a spiritual audit that no one saw coming. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness in God's sight. 1 Corinthians 3:19. You see, God allowed this narrative to play out, not to humiliate you, but to expose the spiritual alignment of those around you. It wasn't about proving your worth. It was about proving who could stand in truth when deception became popular. Those who discerned beyond the noise, beyond the drama, and stood by the truth were the ones who carried light. And those who didn't, who got swept up in the tide of lies, were revealed to be merely religious in public, but spiritually shallow in private. People love to talk about faith when it's easy, when it's convenient. But faith is tested when truth requires us to see through deception. When your name was being torn apart, that was the exact moment when their vibrations spoke louder than their mouths ever could. The vibration of truth always resonates with those who carry the gift of discernment, even when the world is blind to it. Now, the truth has surfaced. But exposure isn't just about clearing your name, it's about classification. God's chosen ones. The truth is now sorting the wheat from the chaff. Those who stood with you are the ones who carry discernment, and those who stood with the lies are the ones who carry decay. It's not that the ones who abandoned you betrayed you. Their spirits simply couldn't recognize your purity. Their vibrations were too low to perceive the innocence of your heart. They didn't defend you because their frequency couldn't resonate with your higher purpose. The frame that was meant to entrap you has now stripped away appearances, leaving only the energy as evidence. And now, God's chosen ones, those who once seemed powerful, are revealed as hollow, their spiritual poverty laid bare for all to see. Meanwhile, you, who stood firm, unshaken, and true, shine effortlessly, like the morning sun rising over the dark horizon, bringing light and clarity to everything in its path. This final test of frequencies wasn't about proving your worth to the world. It was about showing who could still stand in truth when deception and false narratives surrounded them. And now, as the final chapter unfolds, it's clear that you were never the villain. You were simply the test, the divine experiment that revealed the true character of everyone around you. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. The truth has set you free, and in doing so, it has liberated those who stood by you from the illusion of false loyalty. And now, those who chose to embrace the lie will have to face the consequences of their actions. You were never broken, God's chosen ones. Your strength, your truth, your spiritual frequency was always higher than their noise. You were the divine calibration in a world lost to deception, and now the world will see the clarity of your integrity. God's chosen ones, you have walked through a fire that was not of your making. You were placed in a position where the world and those around you expected you to react. The framing of your character, the lies spun about you, were designed to provoke a response. They anticipated you would explode, defending yourself so frantically that the very words you spoke would be twisted into more lies. They wanted you to fall into their trap, to give them ammunition that they could use to further malign your name. But God's chosen ones, you did not fall for it. You did not react. You stood your ground, and that, in itself, became the testimony of your character. What they mistook for weakness was in fact your spiritual restraint. You did not stay silent because you feared confrontation, but because you understood something profound. Truth doesn't need to shout, it simply needs to last. Isn't that the essence of God's plan for you, God's chosen ones? The world expects you to react in anger, to defend yourself as the world would. But the truth is, endurance speaks louder than defense. People who lie, people who twist the truth, do so because they are addicted to chaos, to validation, to the constant need for attention and defense. And in your silence, in your ability to stay calm, you exposed the truth about them. You were not participating in their game, for your spirit was never wired for dirt. Instead, you became the living contradiction to their lies. You see, God's chosen ones, every insult you did not respond to, every accusation you did not fight against, became spiritual evidence that you were not of the same material as those who accused you. Their words, their lies, their cruelty could never shake you, for your strength was not born from the world's methods of retaliation. It came from a deeper, divine source. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Matthew 5:5. In that silence, God's chosen ones, you were the embodiment of spiritual meekness, the divine strength that lies in restraint. While they played their part in crafting false narratives, heaven was watching. Heaven was taking note of every moment you chose, peace over retaliation, of every instance when you stood firm, not out of pride, but out of divine grace. That is where the true battle was won, in that space between your thoughts and your actions. You didn't need to defend yourself, because your endurance, the patience you displayed, was the defense. Your endurance became your divine signature of innocence. And it is ironic, isn't it, how those who mocked you for your silence, calling you cold, distant, or arrogant, are now the ones who cannot bear the weight of their own lies. Your endurance has become your divine signature, a mark of innocence that no lie, no accusation, no false narrative can remove. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. In this moment, God looked on your heart, and he saw what no one else could. He saw that you had the strength to remain steadfast, to withstand not just the chaos of the world, but the discomfort of being misunderstood. Your endurance through hardship was not a sign of coldness, but a sign of deep spiritual maturity, one that the world cannot comprehend, but that God, in his wisdom, uses for his glory. You were not merely surviving the frame that was placed around you, God's chosen ones. You outlasted it. You overcame it, not by fighting in the way the world fights, but by standing firm in your truth. It was not your argument that spoke the loudest, it was your endurance. In the face of accusation, you did not need to defend yourself. Your character stood as your defense, speaking louder than words ever could. It proved who you were when you were stripped of validation, when everyone turned their backs on you, and when you had nothing but your integrity to stand on. That is when true character is born. True character is not proven in the defense of one's name, but in the endurance of hardship with grace. You didn't just survive the frame, you outlasted it, proving that integrity is the highest currency in a world filled with deception. Your endurance became a supernatural gift that is now being recognized, not because you fought back, but because you rose above the lies. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33. In the midst of their chaos, you brought peace. In their deceit, you brought clarity. You didn't need to argue. You didn't need to prove anything. You simply stood. And as you did, your divine strength became visible for all to see. Now, God's chosen ones, as truth continues to unfold, it's clear. Endurance, not defense, has proven your innocence. The world will see it. And they will have no choice but to acknowledge the strength, the divine mark of purity you carry. Let the world see what they did not understand. For you stand in the light now, and their lies can no longer overshadow the truth of who you are. Your divine endurance will be your victory. You are a testimony of the strength that lies not in the loudest arguments, but in the deepest endurance. Stand tall, God's chosen ones, for the truth has already won. God's chosen ones, you have seen it all, haven't you? You have witnessed firsthand how their lies, spun with carefully crafted words, have aged like radioactive truth. These lies, designed to bury you and tarnish your name, never stayed still. They mutated, decayed, and eventually leaked through every effort made to contain them. What began as whispers, half-truths, and subtle accusations has now transformed into something that cannot be managed or cleaned up. You see, their plan was never just about keeping their deceit hidden. They thought they could bury it under charm, distractions, and repetition. But time, the ultimate truth-teller, has its own way of exposing what's been concealed. And with every passing day, the false words they spoke started to break down, unraveling like poison leaking into their own credibility. You didn't need to fight back. Time itself has been your ally, unveiling the truth that they tried so hard to suppress. This situation is not new to you, God's chosen ones, for truth requires no maintenance. It does not need constant explanations, updated stories, or new versions. But lies? Lies need constant upkeep. As they tried desperately to maintain their illusion, it began to collapse under its own weight. Lies are exhausting, and eventually they cannot keep up the facade forever. The details they once fed to the world stopped matching. The confident tones they once used to lie became laced with desperation. Isn't it interesting how truth is self-sustaining? Your integrity, God's divine light within you, doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists, and over time, its power grows stronger while the lies degrade. Do you see it now? Do you feel how, as the truth about your life begins to surface, it does not just expose their lies, but reveals the very spiritual poverty that has plagued them all along? They thought they could smear you, project their insecurities and lies onto you, and walk away untouched. They underestimated you, God's chosen ones. And now, as the truth emerges, those lies have aged into undeniable proof of their betrayal. What they once used to destroy your reputation is now replaying like confessions they can't escape from. The truth will set you free, John 8:32, and it has set you free from their lies and from the burden of their manipulation. God allowed this moment not just for the truth to clear your name, but to reveal their true nature. It was never about you, God's chosen ones. It was always about the spiritual condition of their hearts. Their instincts always knew the truth, but they chose to ignore it, allowing their egos to lead them into deceit. The disgust people feel now is not just because they learned the truth about you, but because they are beginning to realize the truth about themselves. Their spiritual conscience always whispered that something was wrong, but they ignored it. Can you imagine the discomfort they now feel, the weight of their guilt slowly catching up to them? It's as if their spirits always knew, but their pride made them blind to it. Now, that uneasiness is undeniable. Every lie they told has become a timestamp of guilt, a public record of their spiritual state at that very moment. Every false word they spoke about you is now coming back as undeniable proof of their own betrayal. What they tried to use to bury your truth has now become their spiritual obituary. For the word of the Lord is right and true, he is faithful in all he does. Psalm 33:4. Their deception has aged like decay. The mask they wore, the stories they built to protect their fragile egos, has crumbled. The cracks that were once invisible are now fully visible. The truth is loud, and time has stripped away the polish that covered their corruption. The more they tried to cover the cracks, the more the truth seeped through, revealing that the real deception was not just about the lies they told about you, but about the life they built around those lies. God's chosen ones, the exposure you are witnessing now, though it may feel sudden, is actually the natural result of a slow leak over time. The exposure was inevitable because truth cannot be contained. The very narrative they built to destroy you is now the narrative that will haunt them, for integrity always outlives illusion. No matter how long it takes, time will always side with the truth. And truth, God's truth, is immovable. Let us think about this, God's chosen ones. How many times did you stand firm without retaliation when the world expected you to fight back? How many times did you stay silent when they tried to provoke you? It wasn't a weakness. It was your divine endurance, your unwavering faith in God's timing and in the supernatural force that governs all things. You didn't need to force the truth out of them. You only needed to wait. And now the truth has arrived. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." 1 Samuel 16:7. In the end, the world can only see the surface. They judge by appearances, but God sees the truth of the heart. Your silence, your patience, and your resilience have been the proof of your divine nature. Now, those who mocked you must face the reality of their deceit, and it is they who will be exposed. It is not your truth that has been delayed. It was always waiting for the right time, the right moment when the world would finally have eyes to see. So stand firm, stand tall, for you were never broken. What they tried to destroy only strengthened you, and now the very truth that has been exposed is what will elevate you to new heights. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. God's chosen ones, you will not just be cleared of their lies, but you will be vindicated by truth, and that truth will continue to unfold for as long as it takes. Their lies will decompose, and your light will shine even brighter. You were never the villain. You were the chosen one all along, destined for greatness. God's chosen ones. Have you ever thought that the lowest points of your life were actually moments of divine positioning? In the chaos, in the accusations, in the humiliation you endured, God was shielding you, setting you apart, and revealing truths that others couldn't see. The moments you thought were meant to break, you were actually shaping you, preparing you for what's ahead. You weren't being punished, you were being protected. God allowed the clouds of false accusation to gather around you so that those desperate for the spotlight would finally show their true faces when it was their time to stand in the light. What the world saw as your moment of shame was, in fact, your divine camouflage, a shield to protect you while exposing the darkness in others. As people watched you go through your most vulnerable moments, It wasn't just your spirit that was being tested, it was theirs. In that time of supposed weakness, you became the mirror that reflected their deepest desires and fears. Those who pretended to be humble and pure in their hearts couldn't resist the chance to gloat when they thought you were weak. Their hunger for validation led them to treat your struggle as their own opportunity to shine, but they didn't realize who was truly being revealed. The humble will inherit the land and will delight themselves in abundant prosperity. Psalm 37:11. The truth they tried to hide from you has come to light. The loudest critics, the ones who preached love and kindness, were the first to turn their backs, showing their true nature when they thought you were down. They mistook your silence for defeat, not realizing that your silence was part of God's plan, a reflection of His grace and peace amidst the storm. Your strength didn't come from fighting back, but from allowing God's divine truth to do the work. You were not just going through a phase of personal hardship. God was using you as a tool of transformation for everyone around you. The spotlight they wanted so desperately to control turned into their own exposure. Their hunger for glory became their downfall, as the very spotlight they craved for their personal validation turned to shine on their deceitful motives. It wasn't your defeat they were watching, it was their own hypocrisy being revealed. For nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. God's timing is always perfect, even when we don't understand it. During this hidden season, while others scrutinized your life, you were quietly being shaped. God used this time to rewire your destiny, positioning you where He wanted you, refining your character. The shame they projected onto you was not your burden to bear. It was a temporary covering to keep you safe, to hide you until your truth could rise. The time has come for the veil of that temporary shame to be lifted. God's chosen ones, you were never condemned. You were concealed for a season, just like a seed buried in the ground, awaiting the perfect moment to burst forth into bloom. Now that the truth has surfaced, everything has changed. The same people who mocked your silence and your humility now must face the fact that their applause has gone silent. What was meant to tear you down, the shame, the false accusations, the lies, has now become your crown. The irony here is not just poetic justice, it's divine order in motion. God never abandoned you. He hid you until His light could shine clearly through you. Their lies, their cruelty, their false narratives were never your fault. They were the test. You were being shielded, protected from the storm, while God was rearranging your future behind the scenes. The truth didn't need to be rushed. It needed to mature in His time. As the veil lifts, you see clearly now. You weren't the one who needed to change. They were the ones who were revealed for who they truly are. The truth will set you free, John 8:32. And now, God's chosen ones, you are free. The lies that once sought to destroy you have now become the evidence of their own downfall. You were the test, but you endured. You have been covered in grace all along, and now, as the truth unfolds, the world will see who you truly are. The righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Matthew 13:43. Your time of concealment is over. You are now being revealed for all the world to see, not because of anything you did, but because of God's divine plan. Your endurance, your faith, your silence during the storm were not signs of weakness. They were the signature of divine truth. Now the light of God's truth shines brightly on you. You are the chosen one, and no one can deny it anymore. God's chosen ones, stand tall. The spotlight is on you now, and this time, it's not to expose you, it's to illuminate the truth of who you really are. The world may have tried to bury you, but your truth was never buried. It has been protected, and now it will rise to the surface, just like God intended. You are more than conquerors through Him who loves you. God's chosen ones, have you ever wondered how your trials, the accusations thrown your way, and the struggles you endured may have been part of something much bigger than just a personal challenge? You see, While the world may have been dragging your name through the mud, heaven was already preparing your divine recognition. What they called disgrace, God saw as documentation. Every false accusation, every attempt to tear you down, was recorded in heaven's archives, not as evidence of your guilt, but as proof of your endurance and spiritual rank. God does not measure you the way the world does. People look for reputation, applause, and fleeting praise. But God measures resilience, integrity, and how you behave in the face of injustice. While the world debated your worth, heaven already confirmed your value. And here lies the first profound lesson heaven records differently. While earthly judgments are often loud and filled with noise, heaven records in silence, marking your character in quiet moments of restraint. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. 1 Samuel 16-7. Each time you held your peace in the face of ridicule, each time you chose silence over retaliation, God's angels were taking note. Your unwillingness to defend yourself at the cost of your integrity was not seen as weakness, but as divine strength. While the world sought to drag you into the chaos of gossip, heaven was collecting something far more valuable: spiritual receipts. These weren't receipts that could be torn or burned, but eternal records of your steadfastness and unwavering character. This vindication, this moment when your name is finally cleared, feels different, doesn't it? It's not just about restoring your public image, it's about revealing your spiritual promotion. Your endurance was your accreditation, your divine credential. Heaven doesn't promote those who are easily provoked. It tests them, and when they pass the test, they receive the reward: higher authority and access to divine favor that no human opinion can touch. The righteous shall hold to their way, and he who has clean hands shall grow stronger and stronger. Job 17-9. In God's kingdom, scandal often precedes sanctification. You may have felt like you were torn apart, humiliated, and dismissed, but in reality, you were being initiated into something far greater than any earthly accolade. False accusations were never meant to destroy you, but to build your character, to prove that you could hold power without corruption. While they thought they were exposing your flaws, God was testing the foundation of your character, seeing how well you could withstand the trials without compromising your integrity. And now, the divine order has unfolded. As the truth emerges, it's clear that what you've been through wasn't just about clearing your name. It's about recognizing you not just as someone who was wronged, but as someone whose character holds the power to impact not just this world, but the spiritual realms as well. What the world tried to erase has now been sealed by heaven. And you will be called the repairer of broken walls, the restorer of streets with dwellings. Isaiah 58-12. The very exposure that they once tried to use as a tool to diminish your name has now become fuel for your elevation. You weren't just cleared, you were crowned. This divine promotion isn't simply a vindication of the truth, it's the recognition of your endurance and the acknowledgement of your inner strength. Heaven had already celebrated you before earth even caught up. Now, as the truth aligns, the realms are coming into harmony, and your name carries weight, spiritual weight, that transcends the limitations of worldly recognition. You see, they tried to erase you, but in reality, they certified you. Every effort to destroy you, every lie told about you, became the divine signature that validated your purpose. God used the very scandal meant to break you as a tool to mark you with divine approval. You were never just cleared, you were credentialed by heaven long before the applause of men ever mattered. So, God's chosen ones, when the lies surface, when the truth finally rises, know this: you are not just being restored, you are being elevated. Your silence was never weakness, it was prophetic endurance. Your restraint wasn't passivity, it was divine strength in action. And now that you stand before the world, your spiritual promotion is undeniable. The heavens have already declared it, and now the world is just catching up. Stand tall, you've endured, and now The crown you've been given by heaven is yours to wear. The world may have doubted you, but heaven never did. Now, as the truth unfolds, the universe itself will bear witness to the light of your spirit. In the world of deception, you, God's chosen ones, are often tested in ways that expose the most hidden fears of others. Those who sought to tear you down didn't have the strength to dismantle your accomplishments, so they turned to distorting the very image that reflected your true nature. They weaponized perception, manipulating the way others saw you, not because the truth was against you, but because they feared the strength of your truth. It wasn't about revealing facts. It was never about showing the world who you really are. It was about control. When faced with undeniable evidence of your results, they couldn't compete with you, outshine you, or outlast you, so they resorted to psychological warfare. They attempted to distort how others saw you, turning perception into their weapon, twisting reality to control the narrative. But here's where the real power lies. Perception is fragile, just like the illusion they tried so desperately to create. It relies on lies staying alive and silence remaining unbroken. But time is the enemy of deceit. The longer falsehoods are allowed to fester, the more truth will decay the illusion. And in the end, your truth, your integrity, would be what pierced through the fog they created. This reminds us of the story of Joseph in the Old Testament, who was betrayed and falsely accused. Despite the lies, he remained steadfast, and God's favor eventually lifted him to a position of authority. What they meant for evil, God meant for good. Genesis 50-20. Just as Joseph's integrity was tested and proven true, so too, God's chosen ones, your character is revealed through perseverance, even when the world doesn't understand. When they tried to make you the villain, you didn't fight back with anger. You didn't even react. You simply stood in integrity, knowing that truth doesn't need to announce itself. In the end, their lies became more fragile, crumbling under the weight of divine timing. Every whisper, every plot, every performance they put on began to sound rehearsed. Their actions no longer aligned with their words, and the very things they used to manipulate others now began to lose their power. Reflecting on the words of Psalm 37-5, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." You remained calm, trusting that God would act on your behalf. Just like the Israelites in Exodus 14:14, when they were pursued by Pharaoh's army, God promised to fight for them while they remained silent. Their silence was not defeat, it was their trust in God's timing. Have you trusted God's timing in your own struggles? Do you believe that your silence in the face of adversity is actually strength? Just like in the Bible, the truth will set you free. John 8:32. You held your ground, standing firm in the knowledge that time would reveal the light within you. The truth doesn't need marketing. It simply arrives and replaces the noise. And when it does, nothing can stop it. But the most powerful thing that remains is your record, the one thing they could never manipulate. Your endurance, your unprovoked restraint, your consistency, these became the irrefutable proof of your character. You didn't need to defend yourself, because your actions were testimony. In the end, the truth was written not in words, but in your silent strength. Just as the Bible teaches in Proverbs 12:19, truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. The world may have tried to bury your name in opinions, but opinions have no power over facts, and facts are the very foundation of your integrity. How have you seen the power of truth over time? Have you noticed how the lies once spoken against you have started to lose their power? As God's chosen ones, you know that integrity will outlive illusion. What they feared most wasn't just the truth, it was your ability to stand firm in the face of adversity and let time reveal your worth. Theirs was a lie they tried to build, but yours was a truth they could never touch. In the grand scheme of things, they didn't just lose credibility, they exposed their own fear. Fear of what you represent, fear of the power your authenticity wields. Fear of the undeniable fact that your integrity will always stand taller than their illusions. Have you ever seen someone's character shine brightest when everything else fell apart? Are you willing to endure for the sake of your integrity, even when it seems like no one is watching? You are unshakable, God's chosen ones, and while they may try to rewrite the narrative, the truth has already been written in the heavens. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 34-18. As God's chosen ones, you've been subjected to moments that felt like the deepest betrayals, the most crushing accusations, and the harshest of trials. But these trials were never meant to defeat you. They were the divine unmasking ceremony. What others tried to bury you with became the very platform that elevated your authenticity to heights they never anticipated. What they meant to use against you, their accusations, their lies, their twisted narratives, became the stage upon which their own deceit was revealed for all to see. The power of divine justice is that it doesn't fight with confrontation. Instead, it operates through exposure. It is not about the loudest voice in the room or the most aggressive argument. It's about surviving the process and letting truth rise above the noise. In the same way, the psalmist declared in Psalm 37-6, "He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun." It's the quiet endurance that brings justice into the light, revealing the purity of your spirit while exposing the darkness in those who sought to manipulate the truth. In this moment, the very setup they had meticulously planned became the unmasking of their own hearts. The lies they told, once aimed at destroying you, became confessions, whispers, and gossip that exposed their own inner turmoil and insecurity. Their hatred for your strength was more telling than any accusation. The hate they spread was like the rot of a tree, slowly withering its branches while the trunk remained unshaken. And in their desperate desire to put you down, they revealed their own inability to stand in truth. This is where the divine irony comes in. They wanted to discredit you, but they were merely revealing their own weaknesses. While they performed their version of righteousness, heaven was quietly recording the evidence of authenticity in you. Every fake smile they wore, every manipulative word they spoke, and every hidden alliance they formed were being logged. Heaven had its eyes on them long before the world did, capturing every misstep, every deceitful glance, and every action that exposed their true intentions. As in Romans 2:16, God will judge people's secrets through Jesus Christ, as my gospel declares. The truth may take time to surface, but once it does, there is no hiding from it. The universe, aligned with divine truth, made sure that the curtain dropped at the perfect moment, revealing the characters of those who once tried to tear you apart. You didn't need to fight for vindication. Your endurance became your greatest testimony. The silence you maintained, while others tried to tear you down, was not a weakness. It was a divine strategy. As they talked, they revealed their own inner contradictions. They performed, schemed, and manipulated, but in the process, they built their own trap. Every lie they spun was a thread woven into a noose that tightened around their own necks. And your endurance, God's chosen ones, was the key that unlocked their undoing. As they thought they were crafting a narrative, they were actually building a tomb for their own reputations. While they acted, heaven watched. Every action they took, driven by envy or fear, was recorded in the grand court of divine justice. The longer they fought to distort the truth, the more their own actions began to contradict their words, until the truth became undeniable. You weren't simply surviving their frame, you were transcending it. What they built to destroy you became the very platform upon which your authenticity was announced. As Matthew 5:10 says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." You stood firm, and in doing so, the exposure that they dreaded became the testimony that elevated you to a higher plane of honor. In this season, their masks have melted, their carefully crafted facades have crumbled, and now they stand exposed, unable to hide behind the illusions they once so expertly painted. Now, those who once mocked your downfall are choking on their own words. The truth has surfaced not with force, but with the quiet, unshakable strength of your endurance. What remains now is not just your survival, but your elevation. The very endurance they mocked as coldness, arrogance, or indifference has now become your divine crown. Your strength in the face of injustice has redefined the narrative, not just for you, but for all those watching. You've turned their lies into proof of your resilience, and in the process, you've exposed the true nature of those who tried to undermine you. What will be your response when the truth finally exposes their deceit? How will you walk forward when the very accusations against you become the proof of your character? Are you ready to stand tall, knowing that your endurance and authenticity have already secured your divine victory? Now, in the aftermath, you don't have to speak for yourself. Your life, your endurance, and your silence in the face of their lies have already spoken volumes. Your divine vindication is already written, and it will be recognized not just on earth, but in heaven, where your spiritual promotion was confirmed long before the applause of men ever mattered. As God's chosen ones, you were framed, not because of anything you did wrong, but because of the very essence of who you are. The truth is, you were feared. Those who sought to destroy your reputation didn't target you because you were weak or insignificant. Weak people don't get framed. It's the ones with power, authenticity, and an unshakable presence that become a threat to fragile, insecure power. And that's exactly why they tried to take you down. They recognized something in you that they couldn't control or replicate. Your presence disrupted the spiritual frequencies of those around you. Like a beam of light in a dark room, you made their shadows visible. You carried too much truth, too much divine influence, and your spirit was unmovable. They saw it before you did. They felt the shift in the atmosphere every time you walked in. Your authenticity alone, your refusal to bend to their system, shook their very foundation. In their eyes, you were dangerous because you didn't conform. This is a spiritual truth, reminiscent of John 1-5, which says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." This is your power, and it was too much for them to handle. They didn't know how to control you, so they did what the weak always do. They tried to discredit you. They aimed to neutralize the effect you were having, not because you did anything wrong, but because your light was too bright for their false narratives to endure. You were framed, not for your mistakes, but because you carried something sacred. Your very existence challenged their illusion of control over the people and the systems they relied on. They hoped that by casting doubt on your character, they could slow down the divine momentum that was clearly behind you. But doubt, the greatest weapon of the insecure, cannot stop truth. It only makes the light shine brighter. As you stood unbroken, your truth grew louder. The harder they tried to tarnish your reputation, the more it became evident to all around you that you were the real deal. You carried divine favor, an undeniable presence, and God's grace that could not be hidden. Like Psalm 27:1 says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear?" You weren't just facing defamation, you were facing a system built on lies, and your resilience became your testimony. When you didn't fight back, when you chose silence instead of defensiveness, you proved that truth doesn't need to compete with lies. It simply outlasts them. It rises above the noise and the chaos, just like the sun rises after the darkest night. Now, the very web they spun to entrap you is entangling them. Their lies have decayed into confession, and their alliances are now shifting. Those who once believed they had control over your narrative now find themselves trapped in the same web of deceit. God has a way of turning the tables. As they plotted, God was rearranging the spiritual order, using their deception to bring about your elevation. The higher you rise, the more their falsehoods collapse under the weight of truth. In the end, you didn't need to defend yourself. God was already your defense. Truth doesn't need marketing, because it speaks for itself. You were never the problem. You were simply proof that light still wins. Matthew 5:14 reminds us, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden." This is who you are, a beacon in a world filled with darkness, and your light has illuminated their hidden flaws. And now, with everything coming to light, the power of your resilience has become undeniable. The same people who tried to dismantle your spirit are now forced to witness your rise. The irony is beautiful. They wanted to bury your name, but instead they helped engrave it in the book of victory. You've become a living testimony to the fact that truth and endurance outlast deception. Your story isn't just about surviving their lies. It's about transcending them, rising above their illusions, and shining even brighter than they could ever anticipate. How will you continue to carry your light now that the truth is revealed? What will be your next step as the weight of your endurance begins to bear fruit? Will you let the world see the power of resilience, not through words, but through the life you lead? God's chosen ones, this is your moment. Stand tall, for your name is being written in the heavens, and no weapon formed against you shall prosper. You, God's chosen ones, have undergone a process that transcends mere confrontation or argument. Your battle wasn't fought with words alone. It was fought on a spiritual frequency, an energetic level that could not be ignored. The truth about your life, your integrity, and your character didn't just change opinions. It altered the atmosphere around you. Those who once laughed, mocked, or believed the lies about you are now feeling something deep within them, a physical discomfort, a sense of unease. This discomfort isn't random. It's an energetic reaction that happens when truth surfaces and forces people to confront their own choices. The irony of this moment is profound. Those who tried to distort your reality and projected their own faults onto you are now experiencing the spiritual recoil of their actions. What they helped create, whether through active participation or silence, has now come back to challenge them. It's no longer about the words they said. It's about the energy that their words, their actions, and their very beings gave off. Energy doesn't lie. You may have witnessed this truth in your own life, how sometimes words can deceive, but a person's presence, their energy, their aura, can reveal everything about their true intentions. As the Bible says in Luke 6:45, "A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." This speaks to the truth of their discomfort. Their words may have betrayed you, but their souls are now rejecting the falsehoods they helped create. You see, when the divine truth enters the scene, it does not ask for permission. It doesn't negotiate for acknowledgement. It purges the darkness, expels the falsehoods, and exposes what has been hidden. It forces people to confront their choices that may have been aligned with darkness, not light. Ephesians 5:11-1-3 states, "Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them, for it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret." But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. God's light is powerful, and it doesn't coexist with deceit. What's happening now is more than just a social shift. It's spiritual purification. It's not just your reputation that is being restored. It's your energy, your truth, and your divine calling being cleansed from the lies and toxic perceptions others once placed upon you. This purification process might sting at first, but it is the necessary cleansing that frees your spirit and soul from the weight of falsehoods. You were never meant to carry that burden, and now, as the truth shines through, it is realigning everything around you. Psalm 34:17 reminds us, "The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles." You have been delivered from the lies, and your truth has illuminated the path for others to see clearly. The collective disgust you now feel from those who once stood by the lies is not just guilt, it's energetic recoil. This recoil happens when people realize the falsehoods they embraced and the truth they rejected. It's spiritual justice at work. They didn't just fail to support you, they failed to see the truth that you embodied. And as the truth of your character is revealed, the vibrational energy around your name shifts. The world is waking up from its hypnotic slumber, realizing that they protected the corrupt, celebrated the lies, and ignored the conviction that would have set them free. Now they are paying the price for their misalignment. You, God's chosen ones, are standing tall in the midst of this transformation. The truth doesn't need to be argued, it just exists. Your endurance through this trial was your divine proof. It didn't matter if people apologized or not. What matters is that their spirits can no longer tolerate the lies they once embraced. The light you carry is radiating so powerfully now that falseness can no longer coexist with it. That is the ultimate vindication. The question for you now is this: how will you use this newfound clarity and light to guide others? Will you continue to stand firm in the truth, no matter the obstacles? What do you want your energy to say to those around you in this new season? How will you carry the crown of integrity that was forged through these trials? In the end, God's chosen ones, the exposure of truth wasn't just about your name, it was about setting the atmosphere right. Your silence, your endurance, your spiritual discipline became the message. Proverbs 12:19 says, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment." Your truth will endure forever, while the falsehoods that once tried to bury you will decay and disappear. And that, my friends, is divine justice. You were always the proof that light would win. You, God's chosen ones, didn't simply survive the frame, you redefined justice itself. What was designed to be your public humiliation, your downfall, became the very blueprint for divine justice unfolding. You were not just meant to be a victim, you were chosen to demonstrate the power of truth over falsehood. While others played dirty, scheming to destroy you, you embodied restraint and purity. This was not a mere act of survival, it was divine strategy at work. Your composure in the face of chaos became the sermon the heavens used to teach the world what true justice looks like. Psalm 37:6 reminds us, "He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun." Your very presence in the storm, remaining unshaken, redefined how justice is perceived not as punishment, but as restoration. In the moment of your trial, you didn't fight to prove your innocence. You became the evidence. Your actions, your silence, your refusal to engage in retaliation became the irrefutable testimony that spoke louder than any defense could. In this way, you embodied divine law. It wasn't about proving that you were right, it was about showing that the truth, when left to stand, outlasts time. What was meant to destroy you elevated you. You became the living example of how integrity can act as its own defense system. Proverbs 21:3 tells us, "To do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." You didn't need to sacrifice your integrity to prove your worth. Your steadiness under pressure proved it all. God's divine timing is not measured by human standards. You showed the world that justice is not about revenge or courtroom victories. It is the act of restoration through truth. You didn't wait for your name to be cleared. Instead, you embodied the peace that forced the universe to correct itself. This is why your vindication feels different from others. It wasn't awarded to you by people, but authored by God. The timing was perfect, and the universe responded in divine order. The reality is that truth doesn't need validation. Time itself corrects every wrong when aligned with the divine. The most striking and powerful aspect of your story, God's chosen ones, is that your vindication wasn't just about balance, it was about alignment. Every person who played a role in your framing now sits exactly where their choices have placed them, not because you wished it, but because truth redistributed the energy. Galatians 6-7 teaches us, "Do not be deceived, God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Those who built lies are now living within their own deceit. Those who stayed pure, who stood with integrity, rise above it." The scales weren't just balanced, they were completely redesigned by the power of divine law. Your strength, your unshakable resolve, didn't just change their perception of you. It rewrote the spiritual atmosphere, transforming every narrative of injustice into an example of divine retribution and alignment. Those who thought they could diminish you are now haunted by the very lies they spread, and those who remained faithful to the truth are now ascending to their rightful place. Luke 18:7-8 reminds us, "And will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones, who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will see that they get justice, and quickly. God's justice is not delayed. It comes swiftly, and when it arrives, it brings more than just restitution. It brings a higher purpose, one that outlasts human judgment. You didn't retaliate, yet the universe responded on your behalf. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was your strength. You became a living example of divine jurisprudence, where your actions were the court's verdict and your endurance was the sentence of justice. Romans 12:19 calls us to never take revenge, but leave room for God's wrath. You didn't need to seek revenge. God took care of it. Your name now carries a power that no courtroom can award, no enemy can revoke, and no lie can ever overshadow. You are living proof of the divine law at work. Isaiah 54:17 states, "No weapon formed against you will prosper, and every tongue that accuses you in judgment you will condemn." This is your divine signature, the proof that light will always overcome darkness. God's chosen ones. This divine justice is the proof that integrity and truth have an eternal power that the world can never take away. It's not just about clearing your name, it's about elevating your spirit, your essence, and your truth. Your journey has become the example the world needed, the living proof that truth always wins. Now, stand tall, for the world is now witnessing the power of your testimony, and heaven's law is always in your favor. The final question remains, will you continue to rise, knowing that you were made for this very moment of divine justice? Will you let your light shine, not for revenge, but for the restoration of all things that have been set right in God's divine order? God's chosen ones, what they intended to be your downfall, has become the very foundation of your rise. What they tried to frame as your disgrace, what they used to attempt to erase your name, has turned into proof of your strength. This wasn't just about clearing your name, it was your coronation. While they thought they could bury you, they unwittingly set the stage for the exposure of their own deceit. You didn't simply survive the frame, you were elevated by it. This is the divine justice that operates not in the ways of men, but in the ways of heavenly truth. Truth, when left alone, is not a whisper in the dark. It becomes its own judge and jury. You see, when people try to bury the truth, it doesn't fade, it rises. Psalm 37:6 tells us, "He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun." While others tried to destroy your credibility through lies, they only provided the evidence that you were aligned with divine order. Every lie they spread, every accusation, every smear campaign, each of these turned into undeniable proof of your power, integrity, and unwavering character. The truth is supernatural. It doesn't need to compete. It only needs time to reveal itself. Truth doesn't need an audience. It simply stands. And now, those who once whispered falsehoods about you now face their own reflection. God's chosen ones, you weren't framed because you were weak. No, you were framed because your light, your spiritual gravity, your authenticity was too powerful for their world of falsehoods. Your mere existence disrupted their illusions, which is why they sought to tear you down. It wasn't about a mistake you made, it was about fear. They feared the truth you carried, the potential they saw in you, a potential they couldn't manipulate. And now the truth has come to light, shattering every falsehood and every distortion. The irony is beautiful. Psalm 18:28 speaks of how God lights our way, saying, "You, Lord, keep my lamp burning. My God turns my darkness into light." What they sought to bury, to make invisible, is now the very force that reveals their darkness. Your silence in the face of their slander, your restraint amidst their attacks, has become the weapon that outlasted all their efforts. Proverbs 12:19 states, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment." Your endurance wasn't just about surviving, it was about standing firm in truth. The exposure of your truth didn't just clear your name, it was divinely orchestrated to reveal the truth about them. Their masks fell, and with every revelation, their true selves were unveiled. The lies they spread to manipulate perception are now the very evidence of their corruption. What they tried to make you into, they became. 1 Timothy 6:12 encourages us, "Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called when you made your good confession in the presence of many witnesses." You didn't fight with anger or hatred, you fought with integrity, with patience, and with grace. In the end, it wasn't about proving your innocence, it was about demonstrating divine justice through endurance. As God's chosen ones, your endurance became the measure of your character, and that measure was not based on human opinion, but on divine validation. When God's timing arrived, everything was exposed not to destroy, but to restore. Your name, which was once dragged through the mud, is now rising to higher spiritual levels, carrying power and authority that no human system could ever give you. Matthew 5:10-12 tells us, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven." You are not just restored, you are vindicated on a heavenly level. What they built to destroy you has become the very foundation of your divine promotion. You were not just framed, you were elevated through it all. The very people who tried to break you now have to face the weight of their own actions. They are left with nothing but guilt, while your name is set free. This is the most profound form of justice, not the world's idea of retribution, but divine justice, where truth outlasts all deception. Your story is now a living example of how light wins, not by force, but by truth's endurance. Hebrews 10:23 reminds us to hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. Your testimony is a shining light to the world, showing that truth always prevails, and that God's chosen ones will never be defeated. Now, stand tall and recognize the divine validation that is yours. This victory is not just yours, it is a declaration of the power of divine justice in the world. Do you see it now? Do you see the incredible shift that your life has become? Will you let your light shine brighter than ever before, knowing that truth will always outshine darkness? As we draw this journey to a close, let's reflect on the incredible power of divine justice that has been unfolding through your story, God's chosen ones. The process you've gone through, the trials you've faced, and the injustices you've endured were never meant to break you. In fact, they were the tests that would ultimately elevate you. You weren't just fighting for your reputation, you were manifesting divine justice, showing the world what true strength, integrity, and resilience really mean. Through every false accusation, every twisted narrative, you stood tall. You didn't just survive the frame, you redefined what it means to be vindicated. Your silence, your endurance, your unwavering commitment to truth became your greatest weapon. And while those who tried to bring you down were busy constructing lies, you were busy building a foundation of truth that would outlast everything. What was meant to bury you only revealed your divine purpose. What we must understand is this: divine justice doesn't arrive with a roar, it enters quietly, powerfully, and steadily. It is not about revenge, it's about restoration through truth. Your story is proof that when truth is left alone, it doesn't need to fight for its place, it will simply outlast the noise. Those who sought to manipulate your image have now become the very reflection of their own deceit, and you, the one they sought to destroy, are standing in your full divine elevation. This is the undeniable beauty of divine justice. It is not swift retribution, but a slow, steady restoration of the natural order. And through this process, you have shown the world that integrity outlives illusions, and truth always finds a way to reveal itself, no matter how long it takes. Now, as you walk in your divine elevation, let this be a testament not only to your strength, but to the power of God's divine plan. When your name was dragged through the mud, it wasn't your reputation they were attacking, it was your spiritual alignment with truth and light. And now, you stand as a living case study of divine justice, where every lie that was told about you has become fuel for your divine rise. Your resilience has proven that no matter how much darkness tries to surround you, your light will always outshine it. If this message has resonated with you, I invite you to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you experienced a time when your truth was tested and ultimately revealed in ways you couldn't have imagined? I'd love to hear your story and how divine justice has worked in your life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue receiving more uplifting messages and spiritual guidance that will keep you aligned with your true purpose. Your support means the world to me, whether through likes, shares, comments, or even super thanks. I am deeply grateful for each and every one of you who walks this journey with me. And as you move forward, I bless you with continued strength, divine clarity, and unwavering faith. May your light continue to shine brightly, and may your truth always be your guiding star. Remember, you are God's chosen one, and nothing, no lie, no accusation, no force in this world can take away the divine power you carry. Keep standing tall, knowing that divine justice is always at work.